and welcome to the Grafton School Committee meeting, September 24th, 2019. We call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. I'd like to invite any comments from the public or community groups to come up and speak. Anybody? No? I don't have a chairperson's report, and we don't have an educational report tonight, so we're going to go right on to our first item on the agenda, which we're going to invite Roseanne Kropaska up to present an award. So come on up.
Thank you.
I didn't know if we were going to drum roll or invite him up.
So thank you for welcoming us tonight. I am pleased to announce that Mr. Tim Fouth, Grafton's Middle School's Assistant Principal and my colleague, has been nominated for a 2019-2020 Life Changer of the Year Award.
Yay!
The Life Changer of the Year program recognizes and rewards K-12 school employees who make a positive difference in the lives of students. Why did I nominate Mr. Fouth? Mr. Fouth is a true team player, a man of deep integrity, intelligent creativity, compassion, and kindness. He dedicates the majority of his day to the benefits, to making connections with our GMS students and families. He demonstrates almost daily the benefits of face-to-face communication with families and with our students. Through Mr. Fouth's efforts, he has earned a great deal of respect among our student body and among our GMS families, and that's because of the respect he affords to them. I also consistently see the respect that he has gained from his GMS colleagues. Daily, Mr. Fouth arrives to school with a positive attitude, high energy. He is consistently ready to brainstorm any situation, whether it comes from a child or an adult, and he is a natural collaborator. Outside of school, Mr. Fouth is a family man with a lovely wife and two beautiful sons. He understands the importance of family, and he supports our community members in that area as well. Also outside of school, Mr. Fouth has established a program called Do Kind that promotes kind acts within other schools, so he's spreading the wealth. You can view Mr. Fouth's Life Changer nominee profile on the Life Changer of the Year website by visiting www.lifechangeroftheyear.com. It's on his profile that you can add a comment to help him become successful in his nomination and improve his chances of winning this award. I would like to present Mr. Fouth with this certificate of excellence in recognition of exemplifying excellence, positive influence, and leadership within the Grafton Middle School community. And now please join me in wishing Mr. Fouth well on his nomination, and we'll have good news in December.
Terribly kind. Awfully
Tim,
embarrassing.
Do you want to say anything before?
Well, I certainly want to publicly thank Roseanne. I know I thanked Roseanne in front of our staff, our first faculty meeting as well, but this was massively out of the blue and an unbelievable surprise. And it's hard to hear, a lot of accolades and fantastic things, I think, said about you. You always like it, but it's hard to hear and articulate, I think, pretty well. But I think the nomination, wherever it goes, is a testament to the team that we have at Grafton Middle School. It certainly isn't me by any stretch of the imagination. It's Roseanne and everybody that we work with, including you guys. Going into my 8th year now at the middle school. It's been an unbelievable journey, and it's the best job I've ever had. So it's pretty cool. So thank you for that, Roseanne.
You are so welcome.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you very much.
Well,
Thank
just
you.
wait, before you go, I'm
Oh.
sure we have things we want to say, or at least I do, but
Okay.
I'll open it up to the committee first, if anybody has anything to say.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
Good luck, but thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say that as someone whose family has definitely benefited from your gifts, I'm a big fan, and I just think that what you do every single day really does set the tone for the middle school. You do a great job getting to know the kids individually and getting to know the families, and I know I'm personally very thankful, and I think the whole town is really lucky to have you.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. The feeling's mutual.
Oh, that was nice. I was just gonna, similar to what Heather said, I just wanted to say, when you talking about the respect, because you also give the respect to the students, and that's so important when you think about middle school. I don't know about any of you, but when I think back to middle school, kind is not the first word that pops into my mind. And I think leading with kindness is one of the more important things you can do, and one of the more important skills you can give or teach on how to do that, and how to be kind, and how to be mindful about being kind all the time. And I appreciate that it's being demonstrated from the top down, and that you're a positive role model for our kids in the middle school, and for the rest of us too, to take on your good work. And I love that you're spreading it through the entire, through the state, and more people can benefit from it, because the more we can start with kindness, the more we can learn to come together and make a difference in the world. So thank you for making a difference in this, and as a middle school vice principal, and you too as a principal, and you both make a difference in the whole community there. You can see it every day, so we're so appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you.
And often I let people take pictures. I don't know if you want a picture with me or Dr. Cummings, or if you're good. For your social. Yeah, I have a big social media. So we're, if you want it in front of the seal, I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
Out of the way here.
I would like it myself.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just tried.
I didn't mention. Yeah. Oh, I'm fine. I'm not going to be in the picture. Where are we going?
Oh, yeah.
This is why I got Peter out, so I can be. Just kidding. Oh, I don't want to be in the middle though. I'm really short. Yeah, you should be in the middle because you're the.
We've never done this before.
All right, thank you. That's gonna get you a lot of likes on Insta.
Thank you. Congrats.
Thank you. Good luck.
Now you gotta bring home the gold.
I do make people come up and take pictures a lot when we have kids, just to give you guys a heads up. That's kind of my thing. Oh, well, that was great. Thank you very much. And next up, we have Neil Trahan, who's going to give us our technology report. Also somebody who leads with kindness, so nice to see you.
This is my first meeting with the new lights.
Yeah.
Apologize for any glare that comes off from the new lights.
We do need volunteer makeup artists to come in.
It is a little
beforehand.
intimidating.
It's a lot.
It's a little
Yeah.
intimidating right now.
Yeah.
I want to thank Dr. Cummings and the board. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an update of where we stand with technology. I have to, and I try to always make sure that I recognize our technology team. From left to right, we have John Oren, who is managing all of our AV needs. He's also taking over use of facilities. If you've been at an event at the auditorium at the high school, he's probably there in the background. Someone that may not come back to us is Aaron Hanley. He is a former graduate of Grafton High School, class of 2017. He's worked for us now. This was his third summer. He is amazing. Just comes in, steps back in, knows exactly what to do, and does absolutely anything that we ask him to do. To the left of me is John Sinosk. He manages really most of the computer hardware. He also takes care of our Wi-Fi. And then Jamie Cardinal, the tall gentleman, is our mobile device manager. So he is the student's first point of contact at the high school if they have an issue with their iPad. He literally sits in the hallway on the second floor of the high school 3 days a week for student support. And he's also can be reached at tech support, so students can reach him there as well. Sitting here closest to me is Deb Broussard. She is our new data coordinator. She started with us on June 1st, took over all of the state reporting for summer and the rollover of Power School for the start of the new year. has fit right in. If you can survive the start of school in technology department, you're a keeper, right? She's done a great job. And then, of course, Maureen Malloy. She is probably the senior member now of the technology department. I think she's been with the district 8 years. And she handles a little bit of everything. If it doesn't fall into some category nice and neatly, chances are Maureen is taking care of it. So I'm so proud of my team. Everyone is doing a fantastic job. The summer, people think of the summer as like a downtime for schools. It's not for the technology department. That's when we ramp up. Also transitioning this year, we were using a gentleman by the name of Chris Feliciano from Acuity as our network engineer, a contracted service. Comes in about once every 2 weeks. He started with us about 4 years ago. We've switched over to another gentleman. His name is Jake Vincent. He started again in June with us. We gave him a couple of months transition with Chris, and he's been doing a great job.
Is
So-
he also from Acuity, or? is
No,
it a new-
from HubTech.
Oh, HubTech.
Another vendor. Yep.
Okay.
So in the summer, we do lots of things. These are just the big items that are our normal summer task. We set up and deploy iPads for the freshmen and any student that comes into the high school. That actually starts in April, when Mr. Gale and I go out and get all of our equipment from Apple. Everything gets inventoried, set up for the student. If anyone's been to a deployment in the last couple of years, I think we have it down to a science. I also have to thank Miss Engvall, Cindy Engvall, is a huge help, and she actually coordinates all of the deployment sessions that we have and runs them. But I've heard the last 2 years we've nailed it. We've made it so much easier for students. So I'm very pleased with what Mr. Cardinal and Miss Engvall have done there. Every system needs to be rolled over into the new school year, updated with the right dates for the school and any updates that happen. Ms. Broussard took care of our state reporting. There's several reports that happened at the end of the school year for both students and staff. One of the things that catches us every year, and we do the best we can, but sometimes we're hiring right up to the very last minute and even after school starts, is just the creation of all the accounts that a new staff member needs. How can we make someone successful right off the bat in Grafton? Making sure that they can log into a computer, that they have access to Wi-Fi, that they can check their email for important updates, and that they have the equipment they need. And that happens very quickly as school begins to approach and starts. This year was approximately 56. Not just new staff, but also interns and long-term substitutes and student teachers as well. We take care of all that. Every classroom projector gets cleaned. We reconnect all computers and all labs. Everything gets taken apart, right? The custodians come in and they clean everything. We go back in after them. We have a pretty good system now for going back in and making sure that everything gets connected before teachers come back. One of the things that we do on a regular basis in the summer and throughout the year is upgrade existing staff technology as needed. So we get the call up, I think my laptop just died. We have some MacBooks that are 8, 9, 10 years old that teachers are holding on to, and good for them. But it does happen that they die, so we do that. And then this year, as we have with every year, but a little bit more coordinated this year, and really Erin Hanley, our college student, did the brunt of this, just providing support for our extended school year programs, making sure that teachers who come in the summer that maybe aren't familiar with us or are in a different building are set up and ready to go, that students have everything they need, in addition to the extended school year programs, our enrichment programs as well, and we coordinated that with Lisa Rice, so that was something that we did this year as well. We take the opportunity in the summer to upgrade as many systems as we can, and that's when lots of things are refreshed. We started a few years ago trying to move all of our applications to the cloud so that nothing lives on our server, that we don't have to worry about updates, we don't have to worry about in-house backups and things like that. The last system to get moved was our library system, so our food service, PowerSchool itself, Schoology. So many of the applications that we use are all hosted by the vendors and secure data centers, and our library system was the last one of them. We did replace 2 servers. We always try to make sure that we're taking care of the back end, right? If the back end doesn't work of the network, nothing else works. So we replaced 2 servers this year. Those servers really house things like Active Directory, that's kind of the technical piece, some of our Wi-Fi components, things that can't be hosted outside of the district. Last summer, we started a project where we started cabling the middle school, North Street and Millbury Street to ensure that every classroom had an access point in them. We had Wi-Fi across all of those buildings, but we weren't set up for high density. So now with the introduction of Chromebook carts, if I had 5 or 6 Chromebook carts in one section of the building, the Wi-Fi probably wouldn't have been able to take care of that. So through the use of federal funding, through the E-rate program, they pay 40%, we pay the other 60. We now have finished that project. So last year we did the upgrades, all of the middle school, the 6th grade, 5th grade, and 4th grade classrooms, and this year we did the rest of the buildings at North Street and Millbury Street. In addition to that, Mr. Carlson actually pointed this out last year at this time, that we needed to do something for our kind of common areas, like the gymnasiums and the auditoriums. So we had those cabled, and we put in high-density access points. So access points that can hold more than just the 60 or 90 users that a classroom access point can, hundreds of users for those wireless access points. We replaced 60 Chromebooks at the middle school. So we decommissioned 60 of the original Chromebooks at the middle school, and we replaced them with new Chromebooks. We also replaced the computers in the C237 at the high school. That's Monica Allen's lab. We replaced or refreshed with all brand new computers the video production and TV studio computers at the high school. We refreshed 15 access points. The high school is aging, right? It goes by very, very quickly. So some of that technology that was implemented when the high school first was built now needs to start getting on a refresh plan. So we continue to do that. We have 20 access points left from the original batch, and we'll take care of that with next year. So we do a little bit all of the time. We always want to make sure that our buildings are heated and cooled as best that they can be. We replaced the heating computer controller at Millbury Street, and we have an ongoing project to upgrade the firmware on our wireless controllers. And actually, that was completed about 2 hours ago. But that took the whole summer to do because we want to do it off hours, and you have to take baby steps there. So those are some of the things that we upgraded this summer. New things or new implementations. In addition to refreshing computers and replacing them, we added an additional Chromebook cart at North Street Elementary School, 3 Chromebook carts at Millbury Street, and 3 Chromebook carts at the middle school. That now provides us a total of 10 carts at the middle school, which is 1 cart for each team of teachers. 324 devices total, because we do have some smaller carts that have 8 or 9 for our special education classrooms. 5 carts of 30 at North Street, and 6 carts of 30 at Millbury Street. We also added several applications this year. With the refresh of the computer lab for the TV video production studio, we added Adobe Creative Suite. So Mr. Walsh is switching to that platform for his classes. Tomorrow we start training, ALICE training, or active shooter training. To help facilitate that and to make best use of our time, we moved the kind of presentation port or classroom piece to online. So all faculty and staff were provided with a username and password to do a 1-hour online training. So we did kind of doing that blended learning. That classroom presentation part happened outside of the scenarios that will happen tomorrow and then later on in October. So we implemented that as well. PowerSchool registration and PowerSchool analytics, 2 PowerSchool products, 2 additions. PowerSchool registration will allow for online enrollment, as well as online student demographic update. We piloted the demographic update at the middle and high school. We have about 600 families that have already completed that. We are, as with any new tool, working out the kinks and the bugs with that. Figuring out what way we have to go. And then the registration piece will also pilot at the high school, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. PowerSchool Analytics is a tool that administrators are using right now to get a complete snapshot of students, attendance, behavior, standardized tests, grades. It's a one-stop shopping. It just kind of pulls all those pieces together so we can get a good, clear picture for students. We implemented Splash Math for the 1st grade teachers. And we also added a component to our nursing application which is the Massachusetts Immunization Link. So any doctor that uses the Massachusetts portal to input student immunizations, that automatically gets sent to us through the nursing program. So that was a new request that came in really just before school started, but it was very cost effective and saves the nurses hours and hours and hours from having to input immunizations on their own.
That's cool.
So, as I said, Mr. Oren from the technology department is taking over use of facilities. He's done a great job. He's done a great job with that. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy. The first thing that we've started doing is transitioning away from School Dude to Our School Today, and we're integrating that with Google Calendars. All of our staff know how to use Google Calendars, so we're making that transition. We'll put information on a Google Calendar, and that will get transferred over to Our School Today. And then just like School Dude, there'll be a portal for outside entities to reserve space, and he will coordinate that. The billing happens in the finance department, and just making sure that all the pieces are tied together. But really, that if someone comes and rent our space, they have everything that they need, and they're not left scrambling for something's not working, the lights don't work. To that end, we're also kind of upgrading some things. Mr. Oren replaced the lectern in the podium at the high school, and upgraded the electronics for that. And we are in the process now of repairing lighting, headsets, and the audio system at the high school as well. So we're taking care of that. Mrs. Broussard, upon starting, we also had some changes at the high school in the guidance department. We have a new guidance director and a new guidance secretary. So we thought, well, maybe we can help them a little bit by looking at how central registration can work in the district. And we're piloting that with the high school. So any new students to the district at the high school level are registering with our data coordinator, who is in charge of Power School. She's done 33 registrations to date. She collects all the paperwork. Once there's a completed folder, she sends it down to the high school, has the health records approved, and then the high school does the actual enrollment and scheduling of courses and meets with the families and stuff, so there's no lapse there. It's with the high school that will pilot the new Power School registration tools. So once all of the forms are ready and they're just about complete, we'll have new families use the online portal to fill out all of the forms. It'll all be complete. That will then come over to Power School. We can look at everything, clean up the data. They use the term polish the data, and then send it to Power School so that there's no data entry on our part. Again, we had GHS and GMS parents complete the demographic online update online through the Power School registration tool. And one thing that we saw this year is an increase in support requests to tech support. I think there's a few reasons for that. I think when you have a change in staff, sometimes the person that you had typically gone to initially is gone. Okay, now we have to use the general mailbox. We like that. We want people to send their requests to tech support. That way, if someone's out, it doesn't sit there. We can get to it. But through the use of through implementing the demographic update online, we've had lots of parent requests for help. Now it's important that I know my username and password and can get into Power School, because that's where I have to do the demographic update. So we did see an increase in our tech support emails there, but that's great. We want that. We want that. Some of the things that we need moving forward, and not necessarily right away, but we do need to look at staffing in the technology department as we increase the number of devices. As we increase the number of applications that we use, obviously the support is necessary as well. One of the things that we're working on right now is the continued refresh of the smart boards at the lower elementary. So last year we started implementing at North Grafton Elementary School clear touch panels, and we'll continue that this year. That is in the process. We are in the middle of a phone system upgrade at the high school. Right now, we're in the testing phase, right? So before we rip out any phones and put new phones in, we want to make sure that the system works behind the scenes, and all of the components that need to be there, like the paging system and the bells, can work with the phone system. So we're testing that. I'm hoping to have new phones in the high school by the end of November. Those phones are that phone system that we're putting in the high school is the same system that we use in every other building. So right now, we have 2 phone systems, one for the central office, the middle school, Millbury Street, North Grafton, South Grafton, and then one for the high school. So the high school phone system is 8-9 years old now, so we're just planning for that obsolescence of that phone systems and bringing them on to the same phone system that everyone else is on. Looking to increase the use of the tech support email, that just makes it easy for us, again, to manage and make sure that support requests are handled quickly. And then with the exit of our former data coordinator and the introduction of our new data coordinator, as well as new staff in the guidance department and across the district, it's become apparent that PowerSchool training is necessary. So we're looking at that as well. Technology integration, we are expanding the use of Schoology to the 6th grade. We started that actually last spring, providing the 6th grade teachers with some training so they could build courses over the summer. I meet with them again this week, actually. On Friday, I meet with some of the 6th grade teachers from North Street. We'll continue to work on that. We always provide training and support to the high school and the middle school on both PowerSchool and Schoology, specifically around grading as the school year starts. It's very important that both of those systems are set up correctly and can talk to each other so that when teachers enter assignments into Schoology, those grades can sync right over to PowerSchool. So we provide really very explicit training on that and make sure that teachers have the support there. We'll continue the expanded use of Chromebooks at the middle school, Millbury Street, and North Street. More devices means more use, and we want to make sure that teachers are using them appropriately. That's where I'll spend most of my time. And we'll look at the expansion of the one-to-one program. We continue to add Chromebooks, but at some point, does it make sense for us to go one-to-one at the middle school or even lower? And that is my presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Neil. Anybody?
And thank you, that's, doesn't seem as though you have enough people to have possibly done all that in such a short time. I was wondering if you were the person to ask about the language lab and the state of the language lab, how many students it can accommodate, seeing the thing about headsets. I know you were talking there about the auditorium, but seeing that made me think about what's going on with that tech area.
So the headsets for the language lab get stored in the summer, so they don't get destroyed. Mrs. Germain reached out to us at the beginning of the school year. One of my staff went and connected the headsets with her, made sure that she could do that. Everything is working in the language lab. I actually spoke with Mrs. Germain today about the language lab. There are 29 machines in that lab, 1 teacher station and 28 student stations. And all reports from Mrs. Germain today were that everything is functional.
What is the largest class size? Because I think there's some classes with more than 28 students, right?
I can find out. I don't know.
I know
off the
French
top of my
3.
head.
French
Yeah.
3, they have
Yeah.
a lot of kids because it's combined honors CP. And Mr. Della Chapa did say that they have to split the class. So he takes half the students to the lab, and the other half stay behind and work on stuff, and then they switch. He told us that at back to school night. So I think they have 35
No language class.
yeah.
So it seems as though maybe that would be an area where expanding the ability of the language lab to be used would be great. Like even if you had like somebody who was an assistant, so that it seems a pity that, there's gonna be then half the class that isn't getting teacher type instruction or assistance, right? It would unless you have somebody embedded in the lab who was able to help there.
It's
And
certainly
that's
something we
not
can
your,
address. Yeah,
that's, I'm just,
yeah.
that's why my question about headsets and numbers and functionality.
So just like any other technology, as far as the technology is concerned, Mrs. Germain emails tech support, and we dispatch someone to the lab and more specifically to work with her if necessary,
Yeah.
because there are some nuances with the program, making sure that students can record, the teacher can listen.
Right.
Questions. So thank you for everything, because it's one of those, like, technology is one of those things that, unless it's broken, we take it for granted. That it's just always working, so thank you for it always working. I remember before you were trying to make sure you were trying to get, especially the labs, like, on a good timeline, so that we're not just having that bulk of what we need to fix. Do you feel that you're now in a good,
I actually had this conversation with Dr. Cummings just 2 weeks ago, when we were starting to, talk about the budget. I really do. We started with the elementary labs and the middle school. I have 2 labs left at the high school to refresh, and then we just start over.
Okay.
We really have developed a budget that is, the word I use is sustainable.
Nice.
The technology is sustainable with the budget that we currently have. I don't anticipate any huge hits for anything. It's just if we can continue to maintain and, continue to, add devices, replace devices, access points, network equipment, switches, whatever it happens to be, with what we've already budgeted, as far as a baseline, we'll be in good shape. And every year we start off with 0, right? We say, okay, this is what, I know next year, I've got 1 more PC lab at the high school and the Mac lab that's at the back of the library. Those are the last 2 labs in the district that I personally, in the last 4 years, have not refreshed. But then we'll start over, and we'll go back to South Grafton and North Grafton, and Millbury Street and North Street and do those, and then we'll tackle the middle school, the Mac lab, the library. And at those times, we also assess, is a standalone PC lab what we want? Or is it time for us to look at something else, just like we did with the smart boards at North Grafton and South Grafton? We could have purchased smart boards, they still make them, but we didn't think that was, at this point, the best technology moving forward. So before we refresh those labs, we needed the TV studio. Mrs. Allen still has her computer science classes, so we kind of continued there. But every year, we need to look at, is this what we want to do with the money, and is a standalone PC lab or something else better for us?
So to kind of go on that with the Clear Touch, this is just more a technical question, but with the Clear Touch, are the teachers able to take all their smart, like, I'm sure they had tons of
Yes.
lesson plans from now.
Yeah.
So does it just
The com-
transfer easily?
The computer is still the computer they had before.
Okay,
The computer still they had before, it's just the display. Rather than a projector projecting on a white surface that is touch-enabled, it's like a TV, right?
Right.
It's just the monitor.
yeah, no, yeah.
It's multi-touch, yep.
And then the last one was the Google Calendar and Schoology. Are they synced together? Because I know like all the teachers use the Schoology, so is the Google Calendar synced with that as well for the students who try to organize themselves?
The basic, we have some basic expectations around Schoology that we started with from day one. And one of those, that if it had a date attached to it, whether it was a homework assignment, a test quiz, a field trip, anything, it got put on the class calendar. Those individual class calendars within Schoology feed a student calendar within Schoology. There is no link there between the Google calendars
Okay.
for students and Schoology. So it's the Schoology calendar.
Right,
And that shows on a feed that when students log into their Schoology account, there's a feed that shows upcoming, past due, upcoming assignments or events.
right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Neil, thank you again. For Hub Tech, are they kind of are they an MSP for us? Do they kind of come and, are they doing our security and backup and any kind of disaster recovery for
Yes,
us? And
yes.
they do it district-wide
Yes.
for central office?
Yep. So we contract for a network engineer,
Yeah.
and he takes care of our servers, our switches. He's high level with Wi-Fi, with the wireless system, so
Okay.
all the firmware upgrades. We can take care of if an access point dies, if a user gets thrown off the Wi-Fi, that kinds of things. But like the firmware update, the back-end control of the high-level stuff, that's what he takes care of. Every time he visits, he checks our backups. I actually reached out to him, the conversation that we've had recently was about having off-site backup as well. So we have a backup that lives at the high school and a backup that lives in another building, but I'd like to have one that doesn't have anything to do with Grafton. But he takes care of that, he takes care of our firewall, any of those high-level things, something that we don't have the expertise to do
Right,
in-house.
yeah.
Yep. But the first thing he does every time he comes is check the backup.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. And I think just giving an overview, it's so important, you talk about how technology, just we want it to run, but it's so much more now in education than just having the databases, and it's a real big part of our curriculum. So we appreciate all the work that your team does to kind of keep everybody running, and your collaboration with the teachers to make sure that they're comfortable using the technology and the students using the technology to help them learn and grow. And I, for one, really loved the online update on the demographic. I think it's fantastic. It was easy.
you? Oh,
And, yeah,
good.
and I got a reminder. It was amazing.
To be honest, we had
Yeah.
mixed reviews, but I'm
well,
you know. it can be,
It's a
you know,
work in progress.
I
it's
thought
a
it was
work in
great.
progress. Yeah, thank you.
So you can put my review as a thumbs up, but we always appreciate you coming. Any other questions for Neil or thoughts? Great, well, good to see you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we're gonna move on to a capital planning update, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neil.
Good night, thank
Good
you.
night.
I just have a few slides. We're just starting our capital planning process. This year, we're hoping to involve the school committee more than, I mean, you guys have always been involved informationally. Our thinking was that between now and when it's due, which is November 1st, we're going to have 2 meetings, so maybe this can be one of 3 basically working updates to you guys. This will be, I have, I think, 4 slides, really 3. Just to give you a kind of a general overview of where we stand. We do have the 5-year plan, that's in the dry folder. So we may reframe the big projects that are in that plan and move them around in terms of the year that we might make, be hoping to get the different projects funded. But 90% of that plan, the stuff in it isn't gonna change. It just hasn't, the stuff doesn't fix itself, basically. So in terms of capital funding, since FY16 was a banner year townwide in terms of capital and what we received, that was fantastic. Then obviously it has decreased since then. This past year, we received $271,000 for capital spending. And that seems like a lot of money, probably. When you think of it in terms of 6 schools and over 600,000 square feet in terms of space and equipment and giant, heating units, cooling units, et cetera, it comes out to be about 45 cents a square foot. So if you had a 3,000 square foot home, guess how much comparatively you'd be putting into the home over the course of a year? Anybody have a guess? Tyler?
1,350.
Oh, shoot, I jumped ahead.
Yeah.
Darn it. Oh, I went out
Nice
of
job,
order.
Tyler.
Oh, that was a very good guess.
2,000.
No, too high. That doesn't go far if you own a house. So you can imagine on the scale that we're talking about, it's been a real challenge. We can get some paving done. We can get some smaller jobs done. We had one of our larger projects done this past summer, long overdue since I've been here, that the roof above the library at North Street Elementary has been leaking, and now it doesn't, which is awesome. That cost about $100,000. That was a big project for us. Obviously, it took over a third of our capital funds. In terms of things that have been on the list and remain on the list, among others, these are the things that really jump out. We have paving issues all over the place. What I've highlighted is those that are the most challenging. Right now, if the paving ferry came down and we could pave one area, I'd probably pave North Grafton Elementary. They've got one giant crater, basically, that the town's been awesome. They keep filling it. I don't know how much it takes, but they keep filling it. But inevitably, it rains, we get snow, et cetera, and the crater reforms. The next 2 roof projects that need to take place is the rest of North Street Elementary, so about 50 years old, and South Grafton Elementary School. And you'll see in the plan, and over the coming weeks, we'll really illustrate that. But they're broken down into different sections, but if you add it all up, it's about $3 million. I've talked numerous times about the heat and ventilation system at Grafton Middle School. It is 11 different units. They're each, again, about 50 years old. The building was built in 64, I believe. Each unit is huge and costs a little over $100,000. Right now, when they break, they no longer make those parts, so we have to have them basically manufactured to fix it. It's obviously a very old system. Now, if we did have, say, a furnace go down or a section of, say, the high school, say we had an issue with the mechanics, it's so complex that it can cover for different areas of the building That's not the case at Grafton Middle School. If I get the call in the winter that 2 of the units are down, whatever sections of the school are covered by those units, they receive 0 heat. So that's a big problem for us. And then finally, the univents at South Grafton Elementary School are, almost all are original to the building. They're the ones that we've been having trouble with. A few years ago, we had a fire with one of them. They're just old and very outdated and very inefficient. So those are the bigger projects that we're dealing with. So our plan is, with Tony, with the principals, we will restructure that plan. We'll come back in 2 weeks and provide more detail, photos, and then do it again, take your questions, do it again 2 weeks later, and then submit the plan. Is there anything that I haven't talked about that you'd want to see in the coming weeks?
I mean, I think maybe a timeline, or what, I guess, what's the greater need, or they all equal
Yeah.
need? I mean, we
That's
talked a lot
probably
of.
the way to do it.
I
is-
went to that capital planning summit over the summer, and we talked a lot about the kicking the can down the road, and we have a
Yeah.
lot of these high price tag
Yep.
items that are kind of back in our plan, and then we bring them up kind of every year. I'll see them, but then we never really think about when are we going to finally say we
Right,
need to
right.
do this, and what's our plan in approaching the town, and how we're going to bond it, how are we going to discuss it,
Yep.
moving it kind of from this room out a little bit. I don't know if
Yeah.
we're ready for that. I don't feel like we're ready for that
We
tonight.
will, no, not tonight, but we will be
Tonight.
soon. I mean, we
Yeah.
have all this stuff. It's-
Stuff.
it's-
Yeah,
we
I'd
have
like
that
it
in
to
that plan.
be as comprehensive as possible. So all those things that we think about that kind of come up and that we'd like to have on this plan, that we can really just say, here it is, and we're gonna need to do this because our kids, either safety's at risk, or our teachers, their conditions aren't great.
Well,
I think
also, we're getting to the point where things are costing more just to keep it up.
Right. Yeah,
So-
we talked, yeah.
Well, I mean, at least the heat system replacement.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Like-
In this mechanism of basically whatever's left and it's
Right.
divided and we're happy to get 200,
Of course, yeah.
better than nothing. We have very, very little. 40,000 was what we had set aside for capital projects. 40,000 for the smaller projects, that's nothing. So we're wholly dependent on this, and we very rarely do we have that conversation about exactly what you're talking about. Like, this mechanism is obviously not gonna cover the stuff on this list.
Right.
What is the plan? And right now, we just keep putting it on the 5-year plan, but there's no rhyme or
Right.
reason on our end. I mean, we have no way of, if we knew every year, let's pretend we were gonna get $2 million for capital, we could easily prioritize and come up with a plan, but,
Right.
you know, at your house, if you had $1,350, you're just praying the boiler doesn't go.
Right, but then
or
when it
whatever.
does, then we go and get a, I mean, I feel like it's almost, it's not easier, but we have steps you take when your boiler breaks, you go, you maybe
Oh,
get a
it's a
home
lot
equity
easier.
loan
No,
or
no,
something.
no question.
You don't have
Right.
to, so, thank you. Yeah, cause I also feel like when we were at that summit too, we talked about replacing the turf fields and.
Yep, that's
I
on,
think-
that's on the
I know
plan.
that's on the plan, yeah. And I do appreciate, I feel like we have a really good plan, a very, comprehensive plan, and I think we can just
Yeah.
continue to improve it by making it even,
I think it's the right word to use, because, well, I can't think of another one, but in actuality, it's a list of needs.
right.
A plan would indicate to me, and I'm the partial creator of it, or co-creator, but that
A
we actually
strategy.
have, we know when we'd like to get things done, but we don't have the funding to get it.
Right. Yeah, we've put together a comprehensive list. I think that's a good way to
Yeah,
say it,
that's a
yeah.
good way to do it.
And now
Maybe
we need-
focus on the prioritization, which we have, and Tony will be a part of this,
Yeah.
and Tony's great about, he can speak to roofing a lot better than I certainly could. But
Yeah.
what's gonna happen when it does fail? What's that impact?
Right.
I lose, out of all these projects, I probably lose the most sleep about the middle school, and like not having
Sure.
heat. That's,
Well,
Leaky
because it
roofs
just
are
gets more
bad
and
too.
more expensive every year because you're having to, have those parts made as
Right,
opposed to
right.
being able to go to a hardware store and get a thing and put it in.
it's not gonna ever trend in the other way, where they suddenly start operating more efficiently and things are grand. It's not gonna happen, obviously.
Right. And we
So-
think about what, really what a school is, which again, it's like technology, it's an extension of our learning, right? It's an extension of our learning environment. So we put in teachers who are trying to teach, we put in students who are trying to learn, who are
Yep.
cold, who don't have heat. It's not,
Yep,
it's not ideal, as you know.
correct.
I had a question, I know a couple people had a question, moving on a little list, but still on capital.
Yeah.
There was last week, or I think it was last week, there was a select board meeting, and this discussion of our summer spending came up. And somebody was coming to present, about the capital bylaw, and a number was thrown out that we spent, I think, $100,000 on our summer spending. Can you clarify that, because that is not what I had understood?
General sense, we spent
I thought it was
Specifically, it was about the parking lot project.
Oh,
The
yeah.
question was, if we do a project like that, shouldn't it go before CIPC? And the number thrown out was $100,000.
We would love $100,000 additionally. We spent about $14,000 for that project. We had to put in about 20 feet of a concrete sidewalk, and we closed up the fence that Tyler hates. It's maybe 5,
walk
6 feet
around.
of fencing. So it was about 14,000, and we moved a trash can.
Which is under the limit, I believe, to be considered for CIPC anyhow. The limit's 15.
I think so. That's anything, we had last year, for example, $40,000 that we hold for,
Yep.
in our budget, very transparent about it, for capital.
Right.
We try to spend that only on things that are related to safety or immediate needs that we just can't see coming. Like, we can't encumber or put into CIPC for, any of the units that break. If a univent malfunctions and we need to fix it, if we have to have, 2 years ago, we put in a speed bump over South Grafton Elementary School. We didn't see that coming a year ahead, but we dipped into that 40,000 and we did it. Once we decided to go ahead for safety, first and foremost with that project, I wasn't gonna wait a year and go to CIPC and hope we get 20 feet of sidewalk. So that was the thinking, and until I hear otherwise, that's how we'll operate.
Right, and that was more of a proposed, talking about how that would work in the future, because CIPC right now is not really functioning, so that would, but I think the concern was just the understanding of how much was spent, that it looked like. So I would like to propose that we just send a very quick, correction to the BOS, or, I don't know how to shorten it anymore, SB, the select board, and just clarify just when things get thrown out, and that happens because not everybody's as embedded with our numbers as we are. I mean, I couldn't even remember when it came to my attention exactly how much it was. I think you presented this over the workshop, which wasn't televised, so just, if that's okay with you guys, I'll just do a quick.
Do we know where they got the numbers from?
Nobody's contacted me.
Yeah, nobody seems, yeah, that's a mystery.
Okay.
Well, the time frame of the project was also something that was stated in the meeting, is that the school committee decided in August to do this, and I heard that, and I'm like, I don't remember we deciding that in August, and I'm pretty sure you talked about it in May, that there was
Yeah,
a
we've been
traffic
working
study,
on it.
and
Yeah.
there was a visit to Hudson High School,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it wasn't a knee-jerk, hey, let's do this right now. It was carefully thought through and planned, and I'd like to see that addressed in our
Okay.
memo as well.
Yeah, thank you, I will do that. Yeah, I mean, we obviously, we don't make the day-to-day budgetary decisions either. We give Jay, and he updates us because he's very good at what he does, so.
And congratulations on that project, by the way. I know it's a little bit out of the agenda, but rave reviews. I mean, everybody is just thrilled.
So good. I think I know for a fact it's a lot safer
Yeah.
for kids.
Yeah.
If you complain, they have to walk a little further, but.
I get
it's,
out 2 minutes sooner, so we're doing well here.
Parents love it. We're not stuck.
Is there,
Yeah.
but room in the budget to maybe name the fence after Tyler, like when he graduates?
I would love that. If I got a plaque on that fence,
I might do that. I'll fund that.
just take the
I'll-
one from
I'll
the-
chip
take the
in
one
on
from Susie
that,
Hughes,
too.
Stick it to it.
Just don't call it a memorial fence.
No, no. Maybe
Gotta
we
graduate first,
could,
though.
maybe we could do all of our people who have served us over the years, when they graduate, we add their name to the fence as a thank you.
Ooh.
Kinda like that.
On to
idea.
this. Something. Okay.
Tyler's like, yes, I vote.
Any other questions on capital? This is a good start. I definitely want to keep talking about it, and I'm glad to see it kind of this way and to start thinking about planning. But anybody
I
else?
think we're so used to capital meaning technology that I'm glad to see that we're talking about structures, because, they're not sexy, like computers and servers and things, but those aren't considered capital anymore. And I think it's important to pay attention to our structures, because if we don't have buildings with heat and roofs that work,
Yep.
What difference does it make if we have one-on-one technology?
And that was only, I think that was a one-time year that we had the technology that we were able to put it in, but we've certainly
Yeah.
talked about buildings and windows and carpet and so many
Definitely
things
have.
over the years, yeah. Excellent.
Thanks,
Okay.
Jay.
Thank you so much, Jay. School committee member reports.
Oh, can I, I'm sorry, can I back up for just one moment? I just, no, you don't have to. But non-capital things in the budget, and I just can't help but have it in my head that we had a really nice report, the last meeting about a new approach for teaching foreign languages. And in a class of 35 kids and a language lab that doesn't have enough space. And so it's not just, I mean, I agree with you, if we don't have the roof and the heat and the rest of it, you can't do much. But it's not just that. It's like there's this great initiative that you've got for teaching foreign languages differently. But then you're giving it, not you, but finances are forcing that you're putting that in a classroom of 35 kids. Like, it's so opposed. It's like a cognitive dissonance that the two would go together. And so I think that's something that, everybody has to think about with the budget, is that it's all of that. All these great initiatives that need some more infrastructure and people.
So can I just back up a little bit, just not having a child taking French, and this was just kind of dropped tonight, and I'm not sure if we're doing it justice. The way it was and maybe this is true, is that the kids are not getting instructional, half the kids are sitting there and not getting, and I'm sure, I would guess that's not what's going on. I'm sure that he has things
Can I
going
clarify
on.
what I said?
Yeah,
Because I feel like maybe
yeah.
that was a little misinterpreted. What the teacher told us was that, so it's a mixture, again, of college prep and honors level kids. One group goes to the language lab with the teacher and does work there, and the other students are working. They're not just sitting there goofing off. They're doing group work, they're progressing. Maybe they're quizzing each other on vocabulary, or maybe they're filling out worksheets or something. Whatever it is, I'm sure it's on task work. And then there's a switch.
No, I'm not at all.
It's not ideal.
Questioning that there is particularly wasted time, but I think that that's a less than optimal way
Oh,
to
absolutely.
teach a language.
Yep.
Whether, and the curriculum that you spoke about, which is more of an immersion, you can't immerse without fluent speakers, and almost by definition, nobody in that classroom, if the teacher isn't there, there are no fluent speakers. Right? And so I think the initiative is fantastic. It sounds like the way you're supposed to learn a language, but I just don't see how it can happen if you've got, no matter how hardworking the kids are, no matter how great the lesson plan is, I don't see how it can happen. And I think that that's another thing that when we're talking about the budget, above and beyond capital spending, that we have to push for.
Which is coming up under financial report in a few minutes, so we can get
Well,
going
I
on
could
our-
have
on our
held
budget.
mine, but
No, I like it,
Let's-
it's a good transition. School committee member reports.
none from me.
All right.
No? I feel like this is my segment every time we meet. CIPC Bylaw Committee has concluded its work. I do not believe we are meeting again. I really enjoyed serving on this committee. It was chaired by Matt Often. Peter Carlson was on it, Colleen Roy, Justin, I'm so sorry, I forgot your last name.
It was Jeremy
Jeremy
Graves.
Graves, thank you. I don't know
Yeah.
why I said Justin. We drafted a bylaw for the town to vote on at town meeting. It's been submitted, the warrant has been accepted by the select board, and we're ready to go, and we're excited, and I think it's gonna really streamline how we do capital expenditures and planning as a town. And I think that because we've done such a great job, and when I say we, I of course mean Jay and Dan, I think that not much is gonna have to change. for the schools. I think it's, you know, we're already ahead of the curve, so to speak. So that is finished, and I sent a draft, and I believe it's now approved. So that can be, it's in the warrant. If you go on the town website, it's in there. But Jay has a copy of it to distribute if people want to read through it. It's basically just how to set up the committee, who's on it, how long do they serve, what are their duties. It's very simple and straightforward. So please come to town meeting and vote for it.
Yeah, and I think they're presenting to Finance Committee too on October 2nd.
That sounds right.
Right,
And
so
you're
it's-
gonna go to that, right? Because I
think-
cannot.
Yeah, I will try. Matt said he didn't actually think.
It's October 1st.
October 1st. It's
'Cause it's Ainsley's birthday.
I'm like, so, yeah. So October 1st, if anybody wants to hear more about
I
it,
just gotta look from Dan.
it will be at the Finance Committee meeting as well. Yeah, thank you for your work on that.
Oh, it was fun. I had a really good time. And then my other committee that I'm on, the Grafton Sustainability Commission, we had our first meeting last week with the entire commission. And we have already begun our work benchmarking, both municipal side and school side. And so the committee is going out and ferreting out data off of different town websites and different data points. And we're gonna come back together, I believe it's that same week, because it conflicts with the FinCom meeting, but we're gonna take a look and see what we found. So there'll be more information about our work on the town website. We're working to get that set up, so minutes and reports and things will be on there. It's gonna be a long process. Benchmarking is the first step in a very long process of figuring out what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what can we borrow from other communities in terms of how they're doing it, what can we learn from other communities. And we're basing our work on what Newton did back in 2008, after they had an override and needed another override, and everybody said, where did the money go? So the idea is transparency and openness and kind of figuring all of that out. Where does the money go? So hopefully.
So, Amy, I have a couple questions about that.
Sure.
So I watched the meeting, so thank you again. That looks like a great, you know, it's gonna be a lot of work, and I appreciate your volunteering, and you did a great job. And I do want you to feel free to reach out. There's a lot. That was another committee, though, where I started to watch things get just dropped and said about the schools. And which was one of my, I was very open about my concerns about that committee. I totally am in agreement of what, I think the benchmarking is fantastic. I think stealing from other communities is fantastic. I have concerns for people that come in or they see one thing. You know, there was some special ed questions that just got dropped. There was a gifted and talented program dropped where that's not in our strategic plan, not where the direction of where schools are going now. So that's a lot on you, and it shouldn't be. So I just ask you, or, you know, please know that you can come and ask us for support and get what you need for things like that. You were very calm and measured, and I really appreciated that. I was not. I mean, you all know me. Everybody knows
I
me.
wasn't so
I
calm
was-
when I watched it on playback, I'll be honest.
Good. I wish we had watched it together. So and it's fine, and I know people all, and the schools are the biggest part of the budget, and everybody's invested, and I'm so glad that people are so invested in our schools, and we want that, and we're welcome to ideas. I just don't want things just dropped like, oh, we don't take care of our, you know, things get dropped and said and then moved on very quickly, and then same thing kind of like what happened last week with the money, and
Yeah.
I just
I
feel
feel
like
like
you
those
might be in a
things-
bad position, and I don't want you to be in the bad
At the very least,
position.
those things were really beyond the scope of the meeting.
Yeah, and
And I think that
yeah.
that's something that as we kind of come into our own as a committee, we'll kind of get a better sense. I mean, it was the first meeting, and a lot of the people had never been on a committee like that before. And so, it, you know, I think the discussions are going to go less to Grafton and more to looking at these other towns, which I think is going to be helpful in that regard. And they're going to see, I think, what they're going to see is that we're doing a really good job.
Good. And I mean, and it seemed like great. I mean, I applaud everybody. It was great people, new faces, which was exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
Yeah. So, and smart people, you know, really good people. So, I'm sensitive, as we know. So appreciate it. And
Me too.
Please,
Lots of deep breaths.
please know, you know, that you have an arsenal behind you. We have a lot of things. You know, I saw you brought up like the fees, of course, which is a hot button for me as well. And you know, one thing I openly said, like, you can't just base financial, you
Right.
can't just base education on what makes sense financially all the time. You have to make smart decisions, of course, but you know,
I knew that was going to come up.
and you said right away, we're talking
Right.
about it, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you handled it very well. So, thank you. So appreciate it. I guess was my long
Thank you.
speech. And thank you to that committee, because it's super important. It's going to lead into our budget department discussion as well. Okay. Anybody else? It's been quiet so far. I think I wanted to thank everyone, all the teachers. I think we're through all our open houses. So thank you for the teachers and administrators who come out on the weeknights to do such a great job presenting the open houses and welcoming families into the districts and kind of kicking off the year. And thanks to our PTGs for also presenting on their spare time as well. So it looked like a great start, the ones I went to a great start to the year. So we're very appreciative of that. All right, superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just had a couple things.
Okay.
The CPAC meeting was rescheduled, I think last month, and they're holding it on September 26th at 6 o'clock at the Millbury Street Elementary School. They're going to do some organizational business. They're going to talk about the school committee presentation. We haven't scheduled them, but they asked to come back in October. And they're going to have like a meet and greet. So if interested, please attend. And as Neil touched on for just a second, tomorrow is our first of 2 active shooter trainings that are taking place for all of our staff. These trainings are a product of a lot of hard work of our emergency response team. That's Jody Rapping, Steve Wiltshire, Neil Trahan, Officer Elves, and Lieutenant Minardi. All of the training and the planning is fully in partnership with the Grafton Police Department. They've been fantastic. They also bring in area SROs who are Alice trained along with some of our staff members, and they provide the trainings and the scenarios at the schools. And as Neil touched on, we were able this year to go above and beyond and have everybody participate in an online class and achieve, I think it's like a level 1 certification in Alice response. And that will now be coupled with the scenario training that starts tomorrow. So that's every school except for Millbury Street and North Street, and they'll be held on October 31st, the next half day. Yeah,
Just got a question about
you
that.
fire away.
Do you have any supports for teachers or anybody once they go through it after that, if they need any kind of?
Yep, we do, and there are some people who, for a variety of reasons, won't be able to participate. We do have kind of lesser programs in place for those people. We're kind of taking it on a person-by-person basis, but neither of those 2 challenges, while challenging, are brand new in the world of active shooter training. It's a sad reality, but this is a training that most districts, if they're not doing it, they will be soon.
Okay. Thanks.
And that's it. That's all I have.
Tyler, I'm sorry. Did you have an update for us as
no.
well? No, nothing?
No.
Nothing?
How was I'm putting you on the spot. Did you attend yesterday's, I missed it, but yesterday's presentation?
No, I wasn't. I was out sick yesterday, so I didn't go.
Like really sick, or?
Yeah, really sick.
You seem fine. You seem fine today.
I
Oh,
feel
okay.
better today. Yesterday was not good.
All right. Anyhow, there was a presentation about distracted driving.
Yeah,
I didn't.
I saw,
I
yeah.
wasn't able to attend. I heard it was fantastic.
I attended.
Oh, you
Actually,
did?
I was there. I was doing visits, so I stopped by to see it. It was very, very well done. You could hear a pin drop in the auditorium. It was very, very powerful.
Yeah.
I think it's really the best way to talk about distracted driving is to have 2 folks who have lost an entire family, really, from that, the choice to text instead of pay attention, and it was very, very well done.
Is that for all students, or was that like grades 11 and 12?
It was certain grades.
Okay.
It was 11 and 12, but from all I'd heard from other kids, just through either texting about it or talking, they really, I guess enjoyed's not the right word, but were captivated by
Yeah,
it. so.
that's what I heard too. It's great that you went.
Yep.
Good.
So
Thanks.
glad
Or
you're
if we can
feeling
get that
better.
to some grown-ups on the road.
Yes,
That's
Oh,
really
yeah.
exactly.
I've heard that grown-ups are worse than.
I think they are.
Yeah.
I definitely think they are.
And I should mention, Tracy and I have been just starting to do a lot more work, kind of doubling down on our efforts around vaping, which, if you're not aware, is just it's a massive issue, far greater than I think most people realize. So we're going to actually be holding a secondary kind of summit to kind of with some outside agencies to kind of get a plan in place to do our very best to meet this challenge head on. So I'll have more updates for you guys in the coming next couple of meetings.
I actually had a question from a parent just this afternoon
Yep.
about, do we have detectors in the bathrooms?
We don't right now. We have put
what I
out
thought.
some feelers to some schools that there are a few in the area. couple in the
Not
area,
that
but
that solves the
statewide.
problem, but-
Yeah.
And that's kind of the feedback that I've received informally, even, but I'll have information on that. If the information we get back is, wow, that changed everything, and everybody who's vaping is no longer vaping because of those, believe me, I'll
They're
I'll
gonna have a
push
hard
for
time
it.
getting a hold of it now. It's a 4-month ban, so.
Yeah, that came out today,
Yeah.
so.
I
Curious.
guess I
we'll
would
see.
also just say, though, in terms of if students are caught vaping, that the consequences really include some sort of help in the way of being addicted,
that-
because
it's-
they really are seriously addicted. That's kind
But
of
I
the.
think it does, I think we updated the.
Well, we've been talking about that a lot. I mean, what's in policy, I'm sure is lovely, but then actually doing it in a meaningful way that's not necessarily go home and write a paper about how
Right.
you shouldn't
Yeah.
vape. And Tracy we actually have talked quite a bit about that. Do you want to?
Yeah, it's really going to be a two-prong approach. It's going to be a widespread kind of general education around the dangers around vaping for everyone. And then those who are caught, much like you, Heather, I'm a big believer in how do we deal with the addiction. So it's going to be kind of some real, kind of almost like a counseling approach to how do we deal with the addictive behaviors? What is the trigger? What do you do instead? As opposed to just going into in-school.
Awesome.
And Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, we're partnering with them this year, and it seems like every other week, they're putting in for a grant. There's one that we are a part of with Shrewsbury. They put in for it, we don't know if we're going to be able to get it. And it's about an entire cessation program that's professionally done, which would be awesome.
That's great.
So we'll keep you updated, but
Has there been any word from the high school in terms of whether the problem is still as bad as it was last year? Because I've heard anecdotally that it is taking a turn, that kids are more aware that it is dangerous and that it's not happening quite as much as last year. So it feels like maybe we hit a peak, but I'd be curious
yeah.
from the high school whether that's true or not.
And we have started to talk, I met with some students to get their feedback. Every kid has I usually start with what number of students do you think vape, be it at school or wherever. And that number ranges like you wouldn't believe, but we're starting to have those discussions. It's just I think you guys know this, but it's just a massive growing issue. They have the vape watches now that look like iWatches. They have essentially pretend phones that are for vaping. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think people correlate it with probably, I remember being a senior in high school or a freshman, and there was a smoking courtyard at the high school, but you could smell that. It was just a whole different ballgame. There isn't an odor, there isn't
horrifying.
smoke, there's nothing that's out there.
And up until recently, there was nothing in the news about how dangerous it is and the impact of it. And it's really just coming out now. So I think we're in a good place to start two types of intervention, really.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, yeah.
Good. All right, so, future agenda planning, so we have CPAC, I was just suggest we move them to, both of our October meetings are pretty, are potentially full. We have later start times discussion next time we meet, and then following that week fees, so both are gonna be intense. So since we've had to move them twice, I would recommend that we have them as soon as we can, if that's okay with you. We'll have them kick off, so I'll follow up with them, just confirm that it's okay and that that's a good date for them. And if it isn't, we'll move them to the following one, but.
Which date was that, Laura?
8th, so that'll be after, that should give them enough time. But if it doesn't, then we'll be accommodating for them. And then I had this isn't on our plan yet, and I know Tracy, you would present, so I know MCAS scores came out today.
Yes, I was
so
gonna
that's-
put that in with my presentation
That's on the,
on the
It's on the 8th
yep,
also.
that teaching and learning report.
Excellent.
That's a piece of it.
All right, should be a good meeting. Thank you. All right, we have a bunch of minutes. So I know, basically what happened was the town followed up for me and Jay about what we were missing over the years. We thought we're very good. There were a few that were still outstanding. I know that some of these, I don't know if any of you were on the committee except for me, maybe Jen. It's okay at this point. We need to have a quorum. We can vote even though you weren't there. We've done that in the past. And then we should be, thanks to Debney, I think we should be caught up. So there's a few in here, I believe.
Yeah, they should all
And
be in
some
the
are
book.
from
Most are
workshops.
workshops.
Yeah, most are workshops. So, yeah, Jen, you were here.
Yeah, I saw my name in all of them.
Yeah, I remember these workshops well, too. So, I think that they're on our, oh, you guys are all online now.
Do we have to do them all individually, or can we accept them as a batch?
I think we can accept them as a batch unless, anybody has any issues with any of them, but I think they're pretty self-explanatory, so yeah. I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the school committee workshop on May 3rd, 2016, September 6th, 2016, and workshop on March 1st, 2017, January 29th, 2019, and a workshop on July 10th, 2019, as presented.
Second.
All right, great, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
As long as the vote acknowledges that we're voting that they're here, but we
Yeah.
can't actually speak to any.
I think that's fair.
Most of them.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the minutes, yeah. I actually did have one, just correction for the workshop that we did with Tracy Novick. It was, committee governance and it's also social media. I'd like to have that in there. So we'll just edit that, but,
Good memory.
well, cause I ran that. That was a big, initiative of mine.
Ooh, can we
So,
do it again?
I followed. We definitely could absolutely do it again.
Well, that might be a conference session too, I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes it is, but, it was good to have us all there and we could ask her questions. Melissa, I feel like that was like right when you came on.
It was,
I
I remember it.
Yeah, so, all right, motion made and seconded, and all those in favor? Great, and thanks again, Debbie. And
We
next-
miss you.
Hello. All right, I have, oh, before we move on to financial reports, I actually had a request for a recess. I was wondering if somebody could make a motion, we'll take a 10-minute recess and reconvene in 10 minutes.
I moved to take a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Welcome back. We now return to our regularly scheduled program. We have a warrant that we need to approve. I will take a motion when somebody is ready.
I'm ready.
Excellent, Amy, thank you.
I move to accept warrant number 13 dated 9/26/19 in the amount of $847,462.05.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Did someone second it?
Did someone
Right.
second?
Oh.
Second.
Second. Melissa and I made contact. All right, all those in favor?
Hand signals.
Yeah. All right, motion approved. And next, we're gonna have a preliminary fiscal year 21 budget presentation. Thank you,
Yes.
Jay and Dan.
Yep. Thank you for having us. It's nice to get back into the budget.
Welcome.
This year, we're hoping to do things a little differently, very differently, actually. In the past, what we did is we would bring before you technology. They would go through their entire budget. We'd bring the principals in. We'd bring Tony LeMay to talk about buildings and grounds. That would result in, by December, January, we kind of had the full budget together. We'd basically ask you guys to debate it, make some modifications, and then have it finalized, say, in February. The problem is, if we're short of what we need, that would be unfortunate, but we'd really like to define that as early as we possibly can and have some real meaningful discussion in case we're short. If you go back to last October when we talked about, we had a tri-board meeting. I know it was a long time ago, a little over a year. The town looked at some early projections going out, I think it was about 10 years, and we did our best to come up with projections for, say, 5 years. I think it was a couple weeks after that. So while it's a year ago, the best thinking back then is that there would be a gap between our needs and town resources. So if that is the case, let's speed up the budget process and have some meaningful discussions, if that makes sense. So we're going to be putting before you our best thinking, and I think we're awfully close to what we'll need. What we put down and what we present in September and October to you, I think understandably may change over the course of the year. I don't see it changing dramatically, but we could have students move in, we could have students move out, we could, have a capital issue at a school that isn't on our radar now, but becomes an issue in December, say. So some things will fluctuate, but I think we can come awfully close. And I think that approach is going to help us dramatically as a team as we wrestle with the FY21 budget. So we'll go over our basic expectations momentarily. I talked about the accelerated timeline. This month, I mentioned earlier in the meeting that we're meeting about capital, and we'll meet with all the principals in the different reporting center managers, if you will, about their budgets and put all the pieces together. I mentioned the variables. Tuition's a huge one, transportation costs, any move-ins that take place during the year, moving into Grafton or moving out. And then Dan's going to be able to answer questions about state funding. Over the coming weeks, I will meet with Tim McInerney and try to get a better idea of local funding. For our purposes in this discussion, I'm going off, again, a number from last October, which hopefully I hope it increases. It was about 3.15% increase for the schools. And granted, that was last October. So hopefully it's better than that. That would not be a positive thing for us. In terms of salaries and non-personnel expenses, those are the two big areas that make up our budget. We're a personnel-based organization. The majority of our spending goes directly to salaries. If they're not existing salaries, any new positions that we have added into a given year's budget. So if you look historically, we had that 7.7% post-override, and then the idea was we'd be at that 5.25%, which if everything breaks right, basically gets our head above water, and we can add a position or two. That was really the thinking, and that number served us well in terms of if that's the intention, and I always want to have more than our head above water, but if that's the intention, 5.25 has been great. Anytime we've gone below 5.25, we've needed to make reductions. So we did that in FY18, and we did that again in FY20 when we received, instead of the 5.25, received 4.18%, and then in FY20, 4.5%. That was last year. This year, the preliminary numbers, which match up with what we put forward as our best thinking last, I think it was October or November, is that we're going to need 5.9%. I provided that one-year snapshot of our thinking at this point. In terms of new positions, we have 2 special education positions that we're fairly confident we'll need for FY21. That elementary counselor that we've been trying to get for a few years, and the reinstatement of the humanities coordinator position as well as a STEM coordinator position. As I've said 1,000 times, we've got a curriculum team of 1, and in a district this size, that's just inadequate. So that was really it in terms of new positions. Everything else in terms of the 4.11% that we've got slated for salaries is existing staff receiving COLAs, steps, lanes, what have you. This is a negotiating year for all of our units. Again, we're a personnel-based organization. We need to do the very best we can to provide a competitive wage, and that's not easy. So that's probably job one, and that's going to be a real test for us. In terms of the non-personnel expenses, those are fairly fixed. Those include supplies, ongoing contracts, dues, a lot of that, the majority of that in the world of buildings and grounds. We have a security system, we've got a contract. It includes special education summer school, therapeutic services, all of our transportation, general ed and special education tuitions, things that, unless we're going to do without transportation, say, we can't just decrease. The 2 things that we don't want to decrease, but if we're pushed, where we would go in terms of non-personnel expenses are typically technology, which we've been doing an awful lot on a shoestring now, and the other areas around buildings and grounds and capital. That's the one where every year we ask for, since we were talking about capital tonight, we usually come out with 75 or 80,000 that we'd like for projects, the smaller projects, be it the concrete, the sidewalk, all those things that quickly add up. 80,000 is tiny in the grand scheme of things, but inevitably we've had to cut that out. Last year we cut it in half, down to 40,000. So most of those are fairly fixed costs for us. And that makes up in the, what I think is gonna be the finalized FY '21 request, fast forwarding a couple months at 5.9%, you'll see that that makes up about 1.7% of that 5.9, and the rest being for personnel. This simply illustrates that 5.25, and again, that's served us very well. Do I wish it was 6.25? Absolutely. But it's been fairly constant for us. We won't go through every year, but if you look historically, this came from after the tri-board meeting last, I think it was the end of October, where you can see from FY03, other than that one outlier year, we've ranged from 9.3 to 3.8% increases. And then the early thinking, again, going back over a year, was that we would get 4.5, which we did in FY20, and then level out for the indefinite future around 3%. It was 3.15, and then that 4.1, I believe, was tied to prospective development in town in terms of industry, which I don't believe to this point has come to fruition. So at 3%, you can see that's a big jump for us, and would be a real challenge. But again, in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to be meeting with the town administrator, see where we stand in terms of those projections from a year ago. Hopefully things have improved, and then we can have a more detailed discussion about that gap in the coming meetings. The rest of the pieces I have, in a second we can turn to Chapter 70. There's been a lot of, maybe we should do that now,
Yeah.
actually. There's been a lot of talk about the Promise Act,
Yeah.
which is going through the Senate and the House. It looks like it's going to actually pass. Very wide-reaching, a lot of implementation of the Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations. I should say billion-dollar question, because it's about billions of dollars, is the amount of time, the time frame for implementation. And do you want to speak to that, Dan?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so just a little background. Last year, the mass budget has kind of been on the forefront of trying to project out what potential reform could cost. So they kind of came out with a goal document that there was a lot of, for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion at the state level on passing a reform bill. Many thought it was going to pass last year kind of along with the budget, but it didn't make it into the FY20 budget. You know, they're looking like they're going to pass something sometime soon now, which would go into effect for FY21. But a year ago or so, Mass Budget put out a document that estimated Grafton would receive around $1 million increase in Chapter 70. So that document was projected on if they would implement all the reforms of the Foundation Budget Review Commission in a 4-year period. So they were trying to kind of suggest to the state that they might want to do this quickly, and so discussions have continued. The Promise Act was one bill that we've all heard about a lot in the news, and so in June, the Mass Budget came up with a new projection based on the Promise Act, which would be implemented over a 7-year period. And that had Grafton getting an additional $285,000, so a lot less than that $1 million, because it's phased in. So what they do is that when they said the million or the 285, they're saying how much more we would get than just typical like increases that we get every year in Chapter 70. So the $1 million was a big thing because they were going to implement it over a short period, but if they're stretching it over 7 years. we're not getting that much more than the status quo would have given us anyway. So the 285,000 was based on the implementation starting FY20 to FY26. This, now it's called the Student Opportunity Act, is the act that's gonna likely pass. That'll be implemented a year later, FY21 to FY27 rollout. So we'll be further along this kind of the status quo of what would have happened by FY27. There'll be less of a gap, so I would assume it would be less than 285,000 on this next round of projections that comes out. And I believe the Mass Budget and the Superintendent's Association are working on projections for what the Student Opportunity Act would get for each town and city. And some of my understanding of the Student Opportunity Act is that they are trying to give something to every town, but it is heavily weighted to kind of gateway cities and low income, ELL type of situations. So we are hoping, I think, in the next month or so to be able to come back to you and tell you what projections have come out related to the Student Opportunity Act. So we can, and also I'm going to try to get more information about how it's going to be phased in, so when we might actually see an increase in our Chapter 70. Because one thing also I presented last year to you guys about, we get the foundation budget says that we should get less Chapter 70 than we get right now. So we're called the minimum aid district, where we're held harmless. Like, the formula says we should get less than what we're getting now, but we get a minimum aid of around $30 per pupil increase every year. Even though the formula isn't catching up to us, we're still getting that increase every year. So as they make these reforms to the formula, it'll take a couple years to catch up to what we're already getting. If we were right now not a minimum aid district and we were getting exactly what the formula says we should get, then we would see an immediate increase in our Chapter 70. But because we have that gap, it's going to take a few years to catch up, and then we'll hopefully see an increase. But that's why that gap is part of the reason why we don't think this will give us any positive impact in the first couple of years. It's going to take a little time for us to catch up and then kind of pass and start seeing Chapter 70 increases. So I don't know if you guys have any other questions to clarify what I was just talking about.
I just want to make sure, I think I understand, but so if we're supposed to get less, they'll still give us the
We're always gonna
minimum
get-
up here.
Yeah, we're always going to the minimum, and actually in the, I believe part of the Student Opportunity Act, it says the minimum that we would get is $30, because there's always, the governor usually comes out at $20, and then the state legislature pushes up to 30. I believe the act says that minimum aid kind of sets a bottom level of $30, where the legislature could give us more, but we're not going to have to deal with like estimates of $20 or $25.
Okay.
There are a few other provisions in the Student Opportunity Act, separate from Chapter 70, such as possible increase in the circuit breaker reimbursement for special education, and a few other things. I'm actually going to a conference tomorrow to learn a little bit more about what's in the Student Opportunity Act. So we hope to have more information over the next couple months. Hopefully it is passed, and then we'll get projections for you.
What's great to me is the fact that they're not doing this in the spring, but they're doing it in the fall. Because if this was if it was shelved until the spring, we would simply wait for 6 months with our fingers crossed. So I'm very hopeful. Yeah, I'm hopeful. The reality is we probably won't see anything that we haven't projected already. But I guess there's always hope, but we're going to know within the next couple months.
So, Jay, the executive summary that you sent to us, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Finance Priorities, this is all, these components, the 4 components that they identified, this isn't things that have actually happened. It's strong recommendations, and it looks as though some of those might help us.
Yes.
If indeed the special education rates were increased, if the English language learner
Yep.
rates were increased.
They would all definitely help us. Our worry, and maybe we're pessimists, but our worry is that won't be implemented or funded for, say,
Right.
3 years.
Because this is all sort of a strong want list, but it hasn't
Incredibly so.
happened. Okay. All right.
Thank you. So, yeah, Dan, I'll be interested to hear more, and I'm gonna need it in a graph.
I've told you, a few different
Yeah, I've
organizations, once
seen-
they have more information, usually come out with
Yeah.
a multi-page breakdown and then an Excel sheet where you can see how it actually impacts potentially
Right.
Grafton. We don't have that yet.
My concern, and I've been talking about this for a little bit too, is just, it's the bridge, right? It's where we end up if we end up going off.
Right.
Because we can't sustain for a few years, but it's a better message to be able to say, hey, we need, one more bridge to get us.
Right,
And then
right.
we're gonna get the state, but we can't let
Yep.
these kids that are in school now fall
Yep.
into the water. So, I appreciate this is very, I'm sure I'm gonna have more, I thought that was pretty good. I'm sure I'm gonna have more questions about it, but I appreciate the overview. This is good, and I'm glad we're
That
going out
is-
early and thinking, and we can be thoughtful, and we can communicate with the other members in town and work together, because
So
I think,
we should have more
yeah.
information both about state funding and hopefully local funding for the 8th.
that 8th meeting is shaping up to be a good one.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay,
Good.
thanks, well done. We don't have policy tonight. That will be coming up and hopefully the 8th. Don't have any correspondence, and I don't believe we need to go into executive session tonight, so I will take a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Melissa, second? All right, guys, see you, I heard you. All those in favor? All right. Good night.